Right. This is a quick tutorial about cameras and getting views out of Rhino into Photoshop. So I have my three-dimensional geometry of my unit wall, and I want to set up a camera to take a nice image out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line just kind of snapped to the bottom left corner of my unit wall. I'm just going to draw it out into space, hit enter to complete the command. The next thing I'm going to do is draw a little person, and normally I like to draw a person at kind of the height of like a typical eye height, and the average eye height is 5 feet. So if I draw another line, I'm going to snap to the midpoint of this line just as a place. I click, and then I'm going to double click, move to a side view to make sure I'm drawing straight. I type in 5 feet, hit enter, and then click to complete the line. I'll double click back on this so we can see what we're doing. And so now I have a 5-foot tall line. And then what I want to do is I want to move it kind of away from my model a little bit so that I can stand back. Typically when I'm doing an outside perspective view of a building, or in this case a unit wall, I just want to be a little bit further back from the units themselves. So I'm going to use just the gumball to drag my eye height back kind of around to where I had one before. I'll just delete that out. So now I have a little person standing kind of a little bit away from the wall. The next thing I want to do is set the camera. So if I right click on perspective vignette, or whatever the title of your drawing is up at the top, go set camera, hover over set camera, hover over place camera and target. So I click that. The first thing it's asking is where the camera is, so that's that 5-foot eye height, so I click there, and then the target is what am I looking at, so I'm going to come over and snap to some portion of my unit wall. So now we've got a view that's set at that 5-foot eye height looking at the wall. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tweak this or adjust this a little bit. Now might be a good time to just save a draft view, or just a view just in case you accidentally scroll, so I'll just call it that for now. If you don't have named views up, you can right click, set view, show named views panel, and that'll pull the view up, and then you click save a new view out. Now I'm going to tweak this view. So if I right click up here, I go back to set camera. I can rotate the camera by clicking with the left mouse and moving around. So that might get you could just basically, if you imagine it, turning your head or looking up or down. The next thing you can do is if you right click there again, go back to hover over set camera, you can adjust the lens length. So if you click with the middle mouse button and move the mouse back, it zooms you out versus in, something like that. And then again, I right click, set camera, adjust lens length, and dolly is another one. So again, I click and hold, maybe that starts to warp the view a little bit. It's kind of nice. And so maybe that kind of gets you a nice view started. Then from there you can right click and then set kind of the view setting. You might export one that's like heavily rendered with some shadows. You might set a view and you go back and you edit those kind of display options. Under right click display options you can tweak things like we did in a previous tutorial. So maybe you turn on the ground shadows, right? And you maybe tweak some of the sun settings if you want to get sort of a shadow out. So maybe you tweak that a little bit. You can either go through the process of now making a layout and printing that layout like we did previously, so type layouts, or another shorthand I wanted to show you is called view capture to file. So if you start typing it, view capture to file, this allows you to quickly save a view out of Rhino. The one thing I might recommend is making a named view just in case you can go back to it. So again, that named view panel, you might save that just so that you can quickly go back to it if you lose it or accidentally move your mouse. But if I type back view capture to file and hit enter, it pulls up a dialog box. Here I like checking transparent background because it removes the white space for me, and then I can more easily Photoshop that. The other important thing here is to make sure you set your resolution to custom and then type in 300 dpi in order to get out a nice kind of high resolution image. Hit apply. It asks you then where to save it, so make sure you save it accordingly, save it in a place that you can remember where it is so you can find it later. Here, if you want the transparent background, just make sure you save it as a PNG and then hit save. And then what I like to do typically with renderings is I will do a couple different exports, right, with shadows, with a few of those different ones that we set before. The other thing I like to do is have line work. I just prefer using line work as I'm rendering, and maybe sometimes having the line work blend with rendered textures and patterns is nice. So I'll select all the geometry. So I'll show that again. Just window over your wall, type in the command make 2D and hit enter. Here's where these settings all look pretty good to me. You can make sure that viewport rectangles save, that's always helpful, and hit apply, and then it'll think about it for a few minutes. Sometimes it takes a little while if you have a lot of complex geometry. Remember that the make 2D, it puts it on a top view for you, so it'll appear here in a moment when it's done. And then if you've frozen your make 2D layer, just make sure that's on. And so now we have like a two-dimensional version of our three-dimensional geometry that we can either make a layout for like we did in previous tutorials, or you can go up to File, Export Selected, and then save it as an Illustrator file. You can note that you can export a lot of different file types out of Rhino, so keep that in mind. An Illustrator file or a DWG file, which is AutoCAD, can be helpful. So then save it correctly, save it in a place that you'll be able to find it again later. So hit export, and then hit export. And then you can find those files and begin to use them in Illustrator and Photoshop. Okay, thank you. This has been a quick tutorial about camera editing and getting geometry out of Rhino to use in Photoshop or Illustrator.